Oh, Jack, I think we're up on the screen, aren't we?
Yep, I see us.
There we go. Well, welcome everybody to another Tuesday InStat hockey webinar. We're thrilled to have with us Jack Hahn, who is the former Marlies assistant coach and former assistant in hockey ops with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I was lucky enough to be introduced to you by Ed Palumbo, our associate here at InStat. How are you today, Jack?
Excellent.
Well, we're excited to have you on, and we're excited to see what you're going to present and everything. And we like the waterfall house picture behind you. If you
Yeah,
lean
actually,
over,
my big head's blocking it now, so let me move out of the way.
very beautiful picture, very beautiful. So where are you today, Jack? You're in Toronto.
Yeah, still in Toronto. Moving back to Montreal in a few weeks to be closer to friends and family. So looking forward to that. But weather's really good in Toronto right now, so no
Well,
complaints.
that's wonderful. So tell us a little bit of what you're up to right now, and what you're doing.
So I spent the last 3 years in the Maple Leafs organization, a variety of roles. So I got to go in to a player development role, and then my responsibilities expanded from player development to amateur scouting and pro scouting, and
Let me just stop,
eventually I was.
just stop you quickly. Am I butting into what
Yep.
you're going to present? Should I just bring up the presentation? Is this part of your presentation, or?
Yeah, let's bring up the first slide.
Yeah, I just didn't want to jump ahead on you there, so
No, that's fine.
my apologies. Here we go. We have the
Beautiful
first.
wife, beautiful dog. Okay, so yeah, so about me. Actually, if we go all the way back, I played hockey growing up. I coached high school hockey when I was in university, and then if you go to the second slide,
All right.
my first full time job in hockey was actually as a web writer for the Montreal Canadiens. And in that job, I got to be in the press box and act as a team digital journalist, essentially. And that really gave me a really good idea of what was happening in pro hockey, and that also gave me the crazy idea that, hey, maybe I can be on the hockey ops side and bring something to the table as well. So then the 3 years after that, I set up the video and analytics program at McGill University, which is one of the top, I would say, female hockey programs in the world. Multiple national championships, multiple provincial championships. We've developed several Olympians for the Canadian national team. Had an amazing experience there, and that led to Kyle Dubas of the Toronto Maple Leafs reaching out to me to work in player development and in scouting for the Leafs. And most recently, I was the video coach slash assistant coach for the Toronto Marlies. Now I'm taking kind of a year sabbatical and also doing a ton of writing. So those who want to read my writing for free can subscribe to the Hockey Tactics newsletter. And then I also have a book coming out in a couple of weeks called Hockey Tactics 2020, in which I use all of my experience in hockey to kind of look at 6 hot button topics and break it down using video and analytics.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
Well, you'll be busy then. So
very
you're not
busy.
traveling around the world. You'll be doing stuff, I suppose,
Oh,
right?
there might be some traveling soon, but but before we get to the traveling, obviously we are all here because we want to learn more about how to develop a video analysis framework. So really, it's a fancy way of saying how is it that I work. Um, and whether you're a minor hockey coach or a coach at the collegiate level, or maybe a scout, or maybe you work in the pro level, the workflow looks relatively similar when you're not able to get to the rink in person to watch a game. So the first step is, you get media. So which is you get the game and then you cut it. And maybe you will collect some stats, and then you will go over your clips to maybe sort them into playlists, take notes, or interpret them. And then finally, you're going to either talk to your staff or players or other coaches or other people to communicate whatever findings that you end up getting out of these clips. And then the next day, you get to do it all over again. So next slide, please. So I would say the biggest pain point, dating back to when I was working at McGill in collegiate hockey, is that it's difficult to get clips. So whether you're talking about getting teaching clips from the NHL level or the AHL level, or maybe some European hockey clips. Anytime that you're wandering kind of out of your league, you have to have a strategy for acquiring clips before you hope to do any analysis. Next, please. So usually what would happen is, if you coach in a league that's pretty high profile, you're going to have a league level solution where every team uploads their home games onto the cloud, and then every other team is able to download these full games. So, at the NHL and AHL level, we have XOS Thunder Cloud, and then at McGill, what we used was a service called BitSwap. But really, the idea is the same: is that there's a league bylaw that says the home team has to upload their game, let's say by 8 a.m. the following morning, or risk a fine. And then because they've done that, then every single team can pre-scout them and pre-scout their opposing teams just by going onto the service and downloading the clips. Now, because it's a league enforced initiative, obviously the pros are it's always available, and the completeness is assured. However, it is swapping. So to give you an example, every year when we prepare for nationals with McGill, I have the pleasure of emailing the opposing coach and asking them for 2 or 3 or whatever number of games that they are kind enough to send us. Obviously, whatever number of games they end up sending us, I have to send to them. So it's not really a competitive advantage, because you're always in a kind of a fair swapping type of situation. And also, depending on what league you're at, maybe cost is an issue. So, if you coach at the AAA bantam or midget level, perhaps your league doesn't have a video swapping service just because of the cost that it entails to film everything and get everything uploaded. So it might not be available to you where you are right now. The second solution is personal video sharing. Now, this is where I'll look up somebody in my network and then ask them, hey, can you send me a few games of the most recent games against Team A? Or do you have access to a service that allows you to download clips, and can you send them to me? So obviously, you tend to get pretty high quality stuff. It's available to you depending on how quickly your friends are able to get back to you. And generally speaking, they're willing to do it for free because you're friends. Now, the cons are that, some people respond emails within the day. Some people, it takes them a week, and some people never check their emails. So you're never really sure if you're going to get anything. And that obviously can be a very big challenge if, you're pre-scouting for a team that you're playing next week, or that you're under the gun to scout a player that you've never seen in person before, and you're not even sure that you can get the video. And then the third kind of way to get video is obviously you can download games, whether it's borderline legal or illegal or whatever. You can go on YouTube, you can find a torrent, and you can download these games. And obviously the pros is that it's free, but the cons is sometimes you're just not able to download the games, and sometimes the game that you're looking for isn't online, and also sometimes you end up downloading some viruses along with your game, which obviously is not nice. Next slide, please. So once you have your media, however it is, you can cut it. Now, if you're a video coach, you can use something like XOS Thunder Hockey. You can use Steva. You can use Sportcode. You can even use iMovie or another type of more commercial video editing software. It doesn't matter. Obviously, a specialized tool is best, but you can cut media with pretty much any kind of video editing software. Now, this I would consider the most painful part of the job. And ironically, it's a part that from my conversations with Mark, that lots of coaches or lots of scouts insist on doing themselves, which I would caution against in certain circumstances. Because let's say you're scouting one player, right? If I'm looking at Seth Jarvis from the WHL, who's draft eligible this year, and I want to get let's say 3 games on him to get a full picture of what he can and can't do. Well, it's going to take anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes per player per game. So that's already, let's say, 2 hours of my time to get through 3 games. If you're a coach and you're cutting everything for everyone on your bench, then it could take you up to 10 hours per game. So if you're playing a pro style schedule, or anytime that you're playing more than twice or three times a week, it adds up to a lot, and it takes you away from playing practice or scouting players or having meetings with players or talking to parents or any other type of activity that you would do as a head coach. So what I would recommend is, as much as you can, lean on your video coach if you have access to one. Maybe get your assistants to do some of that, or maybe even use an automated service like InStat. Because for me, cutting media in itself is not really super productive. You have to do it, or you have to have someone do it. It just has to be done. But I would much rather get this out of the way as quickly as I can, so I can move on. Next, please. Now, collect stats. So obviously, I come from an analytics background. That's kind of what got me into hockey ops in the first place. And for me, once the media is cut, now comes time to manually track some stats. So for me, it's part of the process. It might not be part of yours, but what I would say that is, it is very important to take notes. So whether it is calculating, breakout percentage or entry percentage, or Corsi, which is, shots for and against, have someone do it. It doesn't have to be you, but whether it's a video coach, an assistant, an intern, maybe a player who's not playing, make sure it's done. And that way you can really add a lot of value to the video scouting process, because now you not only have these qualitative clips where you see what's happening, but you also have some numbers where you can identify some larger trend. So as you notice, the font isn't gray because you don't have to do it. I just recommend that you do. Next, please. Okay, so now really we get into the nitty gritty of what it means to be a scout, or what it means to be a coach. Is that, so you have this media, you've cut it, you've organized it a little bit, you've collected some stats, and now comes time to interpret it. And I think going back to a previous slide is that a lot of coaches want to cut the media themselves. And I think what they're confusing is that they're confusing really the interpretation of the video with the cutting of the video. So a lot of them, what they would do is they would cut and interpret the video at the same time. So as they're watching, as it takes them 4 or 5 or 10 hours to watch a game, they're stopping every 10 seconds and looking at what this player is doing, or are they in the right spot? Are they making the right read? And they're cutting and interpreting at the same time. And I would caution against that, because cutting is a very mechanical activity, whereas interpreting, you really want to not be in a hurry and slow things down and really digest things. So how you do this really is part of your special sauce as a scout or as a coach. We talked about the eye test, and really what you want to do is you want to give yourself the best chances of interpreting what your eye is seeing in the correct way. So really there's not a short way for me to explain how to do this. I think as you gain experience, as you talk to people, as you perfect your craft as a scout or as a coach, you're going to find yourself improving this area. But more importantly for our purposes here is that you want to recognize that this is a distinct step from just getting and cutting the video. And also you want to kind of really focus your time and attention on getting better at this part, because as I said, it's the second most important part of the process. And next slide is the most important part of the process, which is to communicate your findings after you've cut your clips, after you've interpreted it, and then after you've come out with a summary or some conclusions or some actionable insights. So whether you're talking to other coaches, your players, managers, or scouts, first of all, you're getting to a good place in terms of knowing what's going on, thanks to the video and thanks to the stats. But also as you find yourself in discussion with these other people, maybe they don't agree with you, but having clips and having stats to kind of back up your points makes you a lot more convincing. So really, I would say this is by far the most important thing. Like, you can have a very small detail that you notice after watching a player for 3 games, but really maybe that small detail is what's going to make a difference between this player being effective and not being effective. So really how you communicate it, and then how you teach it, or how you give feedback, or how you do that follow up, and make sure that they improve. Really, that's what coaching is, right? So most of your attention and most of your focus should be put on this area. Next, please. So just a quick, some quick thoughts about InStat and how InStat makes my job easier is that because of the extent of the InStat network, I can get media from the AHL, from European leagues, from lower level junior leagues, and anything that Hockey Tech has under their umbrella. So really, now that I have access to the InStat platform, I don't need to be emailing anybody to get clips. So really, step one kind of goes out the window. Step two, what I really like about InStat is that if you go back to the Seth Jarvis example, I wrote an article about him this week on my newsletter, and it took me about 10 minutes to get the video that I needed on him, and and that video is already pre-cut, so I don't have to go through a full game of the Portland Winterhawks to find his shifts and then cut out those before I start with the analysis part. So it took me 10 minutes to go on InStat, look up Seth Jarvis, look up the games that I want, and then just get his shifts, and it just works. So for me, that's a 2 to 3 hour time saving right there, which is tremendous. So collect stats. InStat has a lot of different stats, whether it's shots or goals, or depending on the league, you might have some passing stats as well, and which is great. Like it might be a little bit overwhelming at first, but if you have a very smart video coach, or some smart interns who are really into analytics, you can really kind of show that to them and let them run with it, which is great. So really, what I like about InStat is that I can now devote a lot more time and attention to steps 4 and 5, which is interpreting media, looking at some trends, looking at what sticks out to me, looking at what I like and don't like about this player, and then use that time saving to really think through how I communicate the findings, and hopefully do a good job of whether in writing or in person. Next, please. And that's it. So that was short and sweet. I think I've covered all the points that I needed to. So if anybody has some questions, we can kind of get a short Q&A going, maybe have a little discussion.
Well, I think it's really interesting. While we're waiting for the questions to populate, we'll give it a couple minutes because there's a bit of a lag on YouTube, and you have that in your story. But I think it is really interesting. And then after you go through your 5-step process, then you can go right back in instead of waiting again. So it's just a constant cycle, and we appreciate you pointing that out about how that benefits you. It's kind of like a candy line. You get lost in there. You just keep watching video.
Well, I think that's something that you should be careful of, just because there is so much video available, but really the point is to use that video to generate some actionable insights and then implementing them into, whether it's into your team or into identifying players, right? Depending on whether you're a coach or a scout. There are lots of times, or whether we're on the bus or whether we're driving back from a game, the coach is just like has his head in his laptop the entire time, right? And there's obviously a lot of pressure to kind of find solutions immediately after the game is done, and to try to maybe rearrange your practice schedule, or rearrange some lines, or maybe change your tactics before your next game. But what I would say is you ideally would like to avoid using that time just cutting clips or doing mechanical things that somebody else can be doing. Maybe for me, the idea is that you hire good people, or you use good tools to make your time more scalable. So maybe after a game, instead of worrying about cutting a player's shifts for teaching clips for the next practice day, maybe you just close your eyes and meditate, or take a nap or something. And you'll find that, things that maybe you didn't understand or that you reacted emotionally will come into focus, and then you're actually able to be a much better coach.
No, I think that's interesting, making sure that your mind is fresh. Do we have any questions there?
Well, I just see a statement from Tony Ferrari that says, he says, quote, "The time saving on those first 3 steps has been my biggest thing from InStat." Okay, so what do you think of the challenge percentage statistics, and how do you use them within your work? So obviously InStat, from what I understand, Mark, it's a soccer platform, right? So the idea of a challenge is, I guess it's the equivalent of a loose puck battle in hockey. Would that be correct?
One challenge, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I think with a lot of these kind of more granular statistics, what you want to do is, I think obviously the idea behind it is very valuable, but you need to set up some studies where you look at, let's say, a 5 or 10 game sample and see, does this vary kind of randomly, or do you actually see some trends? And do better players do better in this stat than maybe inferior players? That way you can kind of figure out, okay, does this apply to my team? Does this apply to my level of play? Does this apply to my players? If it does, great, then use it as an evaluation tool. If it doesn't, no worries, just move on. Right.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we got some more questions here. Daniel says, have you figured out what is the InStat index and how accurate you find them? I have not, actually, because I've just been on the platform for over a week now, and with my writing schedule, basically the biggest time saving or the biggest value that InStat has for me right now is just getting those clips kind of within minutes, right? So I've actually haven't had the time to go that far, and thinking back to my work with the Leafs, we were using another service of a similar nature, and quite honestly, 90% of those stats, I find they weren't super relevant, but then the 10% were. So your job, as you get comfortable on the platform, is figure out what works for you and what tells you a story about your team or your level of play, and then try to incorporate those. So don't feel the need to use all the stats. If you don't understand it, ask someone. Once they've explained it to you, if you still don't think it matters, then move on. Because I think in hockey, most of the simple stats actually give you the most value. So we know that points don't mean everything, when it comes to classifying an offensive player, but a player who is good offensively will tend to have more points. And we know that, good teams tend to outshoot inferior teams. So if you're able to, create goals for, prevent goals against, create shots for, and prevent shots against, then generally speaking, you're on the right track. And then it's all about finding out what, which more granular stats kind of support that process for your team. So Robert has another question. As someone who is just starting out after creating analysis report on certain players, what would then be the best way to get yourself noticed by people looking to hire scouts? That's a very good question. So for scouts who are starting out, what I notice is that the best scouts I've worked for have the most rigorous note-taking habits. So whether it is, you're at a game, you're watching a player, and you're taking notes with exact times, let's say, at 10:48, this player made a breakout play and then skated to join the rush. And then you have that down as a positive play. And then you have the exact moment where it happened, so that once you go back and look at the video, you can actually match it. And so having these good note-taking habits will make you an elite scout over time, because then you can see exactly where your evaluation is correct and where it is wrong once you go back and look at video and talk to other people and look at how these players develop over time. So really, it's the note-taking habits, whether it's Kyle Dubas or Wes Clark or Vic Carnero, who are the best 3 scouts I've worked with in hockey. Their note-taking habits really kind of elevate them above the rest. So Mitch has a question about InStat. Is InStat available to anyone, or do you need certain credentials to join the platform? So Mark is your man. Talk to Mark.
We're open for business. Just
Open
write
for
to
business.
go to the InStat website, and you should be able to fill everything out and contact us, and we'll write back and reply and get you started. Not a problem.
Yeah. So so I'm trying to pronounce this correctly. So our friend Joki Nevalainen from Finland asks, are you satisfied with the clip categories used by InStat, or do you think there are some important categories they're missing? That's a really good question, because in my experience, software moves very quickly, and I think InStat will be very responsive if you have some questions or any concerns on that level. But for me, the way that I like to work right now, because I have kind of a very personalized workflow, it's just I grab the full shifts from InStat, I watch the full shifts, and then I take notes, and then I go back into my notes and cut the clips where I want them to be cut by hand. And I find that that's very important for my workflow, because services like InStat do a good job of cutting things automatically. So for example, they could cut 5 seconds before and 5 seconds after a shot on goal, but maybe the important play happened 10 seconds before. So I really there is a way to do it within InStat, but I also like having the control and the flexibility to kind of manually work in kind of a artisanal way, if you will. But certainly I think in InStat you can set these timestamps before and after, and really I think over time, as the technology improves, you're going to have more and more options and more flexibility. But for now, I find it to be part of my kind of interpretation process, and right now I like to do it by hand. So let's see. So Dave says, from your experience, do you think InStat can serve as a reasonable replacement for a pure video editing product such as XOS, Sport Code, or Stiva in a team setting? Now, my answer to that would be no, simply because XOS, Sport Code, and Stiva allows you to record your own games as they happen. And if you don't have a video coach, it's not a big deal. But if you have a video coach, that will allow him to work independently from you while you're on the bench coaching the game, so that between periods or after games, he already has kind of the game cut in a reasonable way, whether it's goals for, goals against, forechecks, breakouts. Whereas, InStat, I'm not sure what the turnaround time is, but there is a certain there's a certain turnaround time between getting the video uploaded and then having it available. Correct?
Yes. We're working on decreasing that, and we actually just signed a partnership with Knack Sport. So it's another live breakdown service as well, and working on integrating that, etc. So we're working on that, the live breakdown.
Yeah. So really, the additional value of having something such as InStat is that it's available on the go wherever you have internet access, which is not the case for XOS, Sport Code, or Stiva. So if you're a scout, amazing. If you're a coach who likes to work from home, or if you have a staff who are not always physically in the same location, it's great, because what happens is the laptop on which you record the game on Stiva or Exos, it lives on that laptop until you do something else with it. Whereas when you're working in InStat, you don't have those limitations.
Excellent.
Yeah,
you've got a lot of questions here, I think.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, insults?
Come on. It's been very clear, concise, and I really appreciate how organized it was and how you brought forth points.
Yeah.
No.
So if there's nothing else, then I'm easy to reach via either Twitter DM or email. Also, if you have any more kind of InStat related questions, obviously Mark's available to answer your questions.
Yeah, we're available on Twitter as well. You can DM us or direct message us. I'm not even down with the lingo, right? That's how out of it I am, I suppose. But is there anything else you'd like to say, Jack, about what you're up to, and anything else? The newsletters. How can they find the newsletters and get those?
So So the easiest way actually is to just find me on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is JHANHKY, so shorthand for Jack Han Hockey. And then once you find my Twitter page, you can sign up for my newsletter, and also buy a pre-sale copy of my book Hockey Tactics 2020. For early birds who buy in pre-sale, I have 2 bonus chapters, including one with Stanley Cup winning coach Ken Hitchcock, which I just transcribed today. We talk a lot about what his process is when taking over a losing team midseason. He took over the St. Louis Blues in 2011, 2012, and actually, I believe led the team to a playoff spot and won the Jack Adams Trophy as the best coach in the NHL that year. So, a lot of insights from legendary coach. As a more progressive person, I find myself not agreeing with everything that he says, but I think conventional wisdom is wise, and I think there's a lot of things to unpack from what Hitch says. So thank you, Mark, for giving me this opportunity. Really enjoyed talking with you, and yeah.
No, it's been great. I think that's awesome to be able to sit down and learn those things and break it down. And incredible, actually. So I really love what you're doing, and yeah, find him on Twitter, find him on social media. Let's get the followers up. So I appreciate it, Jack. I hope you have a great day. Once again, beautiful picture in the background, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.